Hello and welcome. I'm Brother Mason Crossroads III, and I bring you great news. I represent the most ancient order of the capstone, AMOC, Amok. Our feet are buried in the ancient sands of Egypt, and our heads are firmly planted in the stars. We're here tonight to have a conversation with Brother
Roman D. Alexander, or you can call me Roman D.
And please call me Mace.
It's great to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited. Understanding this beautiful miracle that we live in is crazy, and I can't even put my mind around it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we're here to do, right?
That's it. That's why we're here.
So I've had this question for a really long time, and which is, who are we? Who are you? Who am I? I mean, who is the person that we see walking down the road? The fact that we're here and we're alive and we're in this, living this insane existence at this point in time. My real question is, who are we?
Who are we? If you're looking for a name, you don't have one. You've had many names many times throughout what we call time, although time doesn't exist. We'll get into that more later. But we are a spirit. We are a mind. We are a consciousness, a subconsciousness, and a superconsciousness.
Wow, that's a lot. So, doing my own research and understanding this, I seem to notice that a lot of roots go back to mysticism. What is mysticism?
Mysticism is to understand reality and understand the nature of the life we're living. Mysticism is the compiled knowledge of all of human history. Mysticism is a way of getting a handle on our own lives and gain control of them and improve the conditions that we're living in now.
Wow, that's really awesome to hear. Makes sense now that you think about it. So, this is going to lead in my other question, which is, how far back does all of this go? You know, you hear stories of religion or biblical times, ancient folklore, ancient tales, wives' tales, things that were passed down from generation to generation.
Right.
How far back does it go? We go.
Now we're back to the question of time. How far back?
Oh.
There is no beginning. There is no end. It always was, and it always will be. There's only two things that exist in the entire universe: mind and energy. Nothing else exists. So, how far back does it go? Time doesn't exist, so it doesn't go back at all. It simply always was and always will be.
So kind of defeats the purpose of my next question to
okay.
What's our history to this earth and why here on earth?
Who define our?
Or our, I would say, is a collective word to say the entire human race. Not to why is this guy here and why is that guy here, but just the fact that there is 7 billion of us here.
You think there's only 7 billion?
Let's not. Yes, I understand time is not. It's a man-made construct.
Also, how many there are? How many where? Do you think you've only ever lived on Earth?
That's an interesting thought. So then that's going to go deep, really deep. My mind's being blown already. So, a lot of people get confused with the fact that time is a man-made construct and we've always been. But then you look at the world around us and what's being told and what's being taught in schools. How many things around us tell us lies? And how do we come to understand truths?
You come to understand truths. I'll start with the end first, which is always a good way to go with a question. How do we understand truth? By testing them. If you think something may be so, try to find a way to test it. If it passes the test, then, as far as you're concerned, it is so. If it doesn't pass the test, reject it.
Well, we're going to get into something a bit more, which is... All right, to word it better, how simple is it to control ourselves?
Okay, let me take that from both ways you just said it and bring it back to the question you just asked before. We cannot be controlled if we don't want to be controlled. Our soul has to agree with the controller that it's okay to control us, or we cannot be controlled. You talked about us and the collective, etc. That's the worst way you can possibly come at mysticism. Mysticism has nothing to do with collectives, and it has nothing to do with groups. It has nothing to do with us. Mysticism is about me. And from your perspective, mysticism is about you. That is to say, there are many ways to perceive reality. And your reality that you're experiencing right now is based on your perceptions of reality. Your perceptions and my perceptions are not the same. Mysticism is not a one-size-fits-all. There are certain laws, certain rules, certain principles that can't be broken and can't be denied. Beyond that, the majority is individual.
Now, I'm going to get very, very sidetracked from this, but I would like to point out to everyone listening, me and Brother Mace have agreed to make this somewhat linear and non-linear. So some of my questions will be off the top of my head, even though Brother Mace is saying something completely different. So I'd like the listener to also be aware, because for me, this is also my learning experience, and I am also learning. As Brother Mace likes to say about the Tree of Life,
there's only two ways to exist on the Tree of Life. You're either climbing up or you're going down. You're either coming up into consciousness or you're going back asleep.
And as you like to point out, there is no staying still, is there?
There is no staying still. Nothing stays still in the universe, especially not consciousness.
Man, the consciousness is a crazy one. So, how simple is it for us to be here?
I'm not sure what you mean by be here.
I mean, how simple is it to just take control of ourselves?
There couldn't possibly be anything more simple. If you are trying to take control of yourself, you are failing. There is no trying. There's either controlling yourself or not controlling yourself. It's as simple as that. So how simple is it? If you could see what I'm doing right now, I'm sort of moving my hand through the air in a wave pattern. That's the answer. It's as simple as that. I'd snap my fingers, but it would come off loud on the tape. How simple is it to control yourself? How simple is it to control the universe? It's about a decision. All right, I'm going to tell a little story. If I were to take a lion and a lamb and put them into a cage, lock the cage, and throw the key at the bottom of the ocean, it's never going to open again, how much chance do you think there is that this lion will not eat this lamb?
Oh, it's for guarantee that lion is going to eat that lamb.
And he won't even think about it. The thought of not eating it will never enter its mind.
No, because all he's going to think about is...
He's not going to think. He's going to just do. He's going to do what there is to do. He's not going to think about, should I do this? Should I do that? What will go wrong if I do it? How well will this come out? How delicious is it? No. No thoughts like this will come into its mind at all. It will simply feel its hunger, see its lunch, and eat it. Simple as that. Now, what if I take a human and put them in this same cage, lock it with the human and the lamb in the cage, lock the cage, throw the key at the bottom of the ocean? Do you think it's possible that this human will not eat that lamb?
Oh, the human is definitely going to eat that lamb.
No. What if it's the Dalai Lama?
Then that... Well, to clarify, the Dalai Lama does not want to end another life, right? Does not want to eat meat?
It's not interested in that. Also, the Dalai Lama already knows that he is eternal. He always has been, he is, and he always will be. He has no fear of death because death does not exist. So, the Dalai Lama will very calmly sit there with a lamb on his lap, petting it, until he simply fades out from starvation. He won't eat the lamb.
But why?
Because he has decided that it's not good to kill. In his opinion, in his view of the world. I'm not endorsing it or rejecting it. I'm simply saying, in the Dalai Lama's view, to take another life is not a worthy thing to do, and it will damage your next life. And so he doesn't want to kill anything, and he doesn't need to live so badly that he's willing to break his own rules and his own code of existence. We all have a code that we must live by, and that's his. And so we are deciders. We can choose to do things. One human will go in there and eat that lamb. Another human will go in there and starve to death peacefully and not have even a second thought about eating the lamb. With a tiger or the lion, this will never happen. They're not deciders. They don't have choices. They don't even know that choice exists. So, what am I responding to? Why am I telling this story? You said, how easy is it for us to take control of ourselves? It's as easy as making a decision. You know that you are what people, this is a very difficult word, awake. To many people, it has many meanings. But to me, it's very simple. There's a very simple test to understand whether you are really woke, awake, or living an unconscious life. If you say that you will do something, and I don't mean this in a moral sense, if you lie to another person, this has nothing to do with you being conscious or awake or asleep. But if you lie to yourself, and you know that there's something that you should do because it will improve the quality of your life, and you tell yourself and you mean it that you're going to do it, and you don't do it, you are not awake.
You're just lying to yourself, saying...
If you're lying to yourself, you're not woke. If you're lying to other people, that's just a choice and a decision, and that's a moral question that the capstone has nothing to do with.
Well, this just reminded me of a very interesting question that I have, which is, what's the opposite of individualism?
Collectivism.
Collectivism. Something like this does border a very interesting line of complete and full individualism where you don't care about anyone else but yourself and it's only about you. And then another line that's walked over just a bit to collectivism. Like, I've noticed a lot of people either are individualistic or completely collective.
Mm-hmm.
And as I slowly understand these things that I've been learning from you, I've come to realize it's a very interesting balance that one has to find.
However, this has nothing to do with mysticism or with really what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying, and it's a very interesting topic. I have a lot to say on that topic, but it has nothing to do with what we're doing here. When I say that mysticism is individual, it has nothing to do with selfish or narcissistic. It has nothing to do with caring more about yourself or caring not at all about other people. No one can live your life for you. No one can understand your universe. They cannot really get inside your head and know how you see and perceive the world. And mysticism is all about knowing yourself, understanding yourself, and improving the quality of your existence. So when I talk about mysticism being an individual thing, it has nothing to do with collectivism versus individuality. That's a separate concept. But mysticism is a very personal experience. Now, mysticism may wake you up to a love of all things living, a love of all of nature, a love of the planet, and all of these beautiful things. And it may completely make you introspective and only dealing with yourself and only working on improving yourself and making your own life better. But this is not selfishness. It has nothing to do with that. So, mysticism is about understanding yourself, understanding the world and existence that you are in, and how to improve that and how to make your life a better life.
Wow. I appreciate that answer. But I feel like later on we can probably get into more topics like this, where we do question a few things a bit more.
Sure.
Then I'm going to lead on to the next one of mysticism and secret societies, which is, how far back do secret societies go? Like,
in which epoch, in which period of existence that you're aware of?
Well, I'm very well aware that Egypt is not as old as it's as publicly said.
This is not a question we're interested in.
But it continues into,
I believe that Egypt is much, much older than Egyptologists would like us to think. But again, that's a personal point of view and really has very little to do with what we're talking about.
I feel like, in a sense, which is leading up to my actual question, which is lots of people that are revered in mysticism either have learned knowledge from ancient Egypt or have had teachers studying from ancient Egypt.
True.
So when I bring up that question, I mean,
as I say at the beginning of every show, our feet are buried in the ancient sands of Egypt. Absolutely.
So how, from your studies and research, how far back do the first secret societies go where they were truly teaching real mysticism, explaining the world around us?
Well, you've made a mistake already. Sorry, I don't mean that in any rude sense.
Oh, of course.
The mistake is that you think that mysticism automatically creates good people. It simply doesn't. Everybody has a code that they must live by, and not everyone's code is the same. Plato was a mystic. Plato created the first secret society that we have record of in history. Naturally, secret societies go much earlier. Everything that Pythagoras and Plato know, they learned from Egypt. They traveled there, they studied there, they were there for years, they learned at the feet of the priests. But Plato was a very selfish man. Plato believed that mathematics could answer every question in the universe, and he was very shocked when he found out that the square root of 2 creates an irrational number. Irrational, in the modern sense of the word, means illogical and makes no sense and it's kind of crazy. Well, that's exactly what he meant by irrational numbers. They scared him, and they shook his faith in his mysticism, which today is called science, or what I call scientism. And so scientism is the faith that numbers can answer every question ever asked in the universe. Eventually, numbers will reveal every secret in the universe. It simply isn't true. Because, for example, equations are built on many, many numbers and many parts of the equation. If in your equation you have, for example, 100 divided by 3, please tell me, Brother D, what is 100 divided by 3?
3 something? 3.
Okay, so finish.
3?
You can't. Everybody says 33.33 because they're rounding it off. But in fact, what you have done is not divide 100 by 3. It's inaccurate. Einstein said, as far as numbers depict reality, they are inaccurate. And as far as mathematics are accurate, they do not depict reality. He's a scientist and a mystic and a very rational being. Plato didn't have that. So when Plato found these numbers that didn't fit his belief, his religious belief in numbers and what today would be called science, he decided that these numbers had to be kept secret and out of the hands of the common man. Because in the hands of the common man, they would create confusion and destroy people's faith in authority. And so he created a secret society that's whole purpose, the entire purpose of Plato's secret society was to keep information from the masses. Plato lived in a society where there were slaves, and he was very comfortable having slaves. Plato lived in a totalitarian dictatorship, and he was very happy and pleased with totalitarian dictatorships, and he hated democracy. And so for him to set this information free to the masses would give too much power to the common man and destroy what he considered to be the proper order of society. He even predicted that it would bring down the entire structure of kings and kingdoms. And he was right. We now have democracy in the world. And so his purpose was to keep the knowledge from you. And he was a mystic. Not all mystics are good.
Wow, that's deep. So much for liking Plato. Then I think I'm going to hit you with a bomb, which is, what is the purpose of the most ancient order of the capstone?
Yeah, very good. That's a great question. You could call us the anti-Pythagoreans. You could call us the anti-Platonic society. In fact, our entire purpose is to bring the secrets to the masses, to basically set everyone who has ears to hear and eyes to see, to set them free.
Well, I can say from personal experience, it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is a hard question to lead into, but I think I'm going to try and keep it simple. But how did I wouldn't say great, now that I've heard what you've just said, but how did the Magi before create an awesome and great understanding of our minds and soul? And then what were some of the steps that they used in understanding their minds and connecting themselves?
Great question. They didn't do everything that you just said there, but what they did do, and what we did do, as we are Magi, is we came to understand the structure of the universe. The structure of the universe is, as I said earlier, consistent of only two things, mind and energy. Our soul is basically a mind. And that mind is outside of time and outside of space. It's in what you might call no time and no space. And so by understanding the structure of the universe, you understand then that there is what we call the great mind. And this is where people get the concept of God from, the great mind. Below the great mind is all of us as individuals. Now, many self-professed mystics and people who claim to know all make the same mistake. They have this idea that there's what they call the monad, and that is that there is only one mind, one being that actually exists and is fragmented into all of us. And really, we don't exist at all. We are just parts of the great mind pretending to be individuals. This is why most people cannot create miracles. They actually don't believe that they exist. Science, modern science, which I call scientism, the religion of scientism, teaches you that you are nothing more than a chemical soup, a mixture of chemicals that has deceived itself into believing that it's actually an alive, conscious individual. They teach you that you're like Pinocchio, made of wood and wishing to be a real boy. Well, I personally am a real boy. I am not the great mind. I am me. I have always been me, eternal, uncreated, and always existing. I have existed always before, I exist now, and I will exist always in the future. We are uncreated. We are eternally individual. We are not part of a great one mind, a monad. And this is what stops most people from controlling their own lives and having their own power. So here's what it is. In ancient times, over the Temple of Delphi, it said, know thyself. Okay. So what does know thyself mean, right? You have to understand that you are a triad. You are a triple being. You are a subconscious, a conscious, and a superconscious. The superconscious is what almost everyone in psychology, in science, and supposed mystics are missing, the superconscious. Right? So the superconscious is the only part of us that can communicate with the great mind. And when it communicates with the great mind, we create miracles. So how do we get the superconscious to communicate with the great mind? Well, you have to understand the other two parts of your being. You have to understand the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is completely without its own thought. It's not active and not reactive. It is simply a recording device. It records all of your experiences and it records all of your thoughts. What you think all the time creates programs in the subconscious. And then the conscious mind thinks that it's acting, but it's not. It's just following the program that has been laid down in the recording device of the subconscious. The conscious mind is usually completely unaware of what it is and what it's doing. This is what we call asleep. If you want to be awake, you must understand you are a spirit living in a machine. And you have to understand how the machine works if you want to connect your machine to your consciousness. And once you have connected your conscious mind and your subconscious mind is actually controlling your subconscious mind and programming it, actively programming it. Then and only then can you direct how it communicates with the superconscious and how that communicates with the great mind.
Boom! Wow. Mind blown. I need a second for that. Wow. That's a lot to take in. Whew. So, okay, there's one thing that you said that caught my attention, very much so, which is we're a spirit inside a machine. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And another one that caught my attention is the fact that triads or the triangle or three entities have been a part of many doctrines, religions, and teachings around the world.
Absolutely.
Such as Christianity, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And then you mention the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious. Mm-hmm. Also the triads.
That's right.
And it's putting these together is very interesting when you think about it. Mm-hmm. All right, well, but my main question here is, you say we're a spirit living inside a machine. Mm-hmm. What is the purpose of the machine, starting with the conscious mind? I feel like I need to understand a little bit more about the conscious mind and its purpose and its function and how it helps navigate this existence that we're living in.
Okay, let's forget about purpose. Nothing has a purpose. However,
we'll get to that later.
Okay, precisely. First of all, what is consciousness? What is the scientific definition of consciousness? Do you know?
I do not know.
There is no scientific definition of consciousness. No science and no scientist has any explanation whatsoever for what consciousness is. Consciousness, as the best they can describe it to you, is that which you lose when they put a needle in your arm and knock you out for an operation, and what you regain when the drug wears off.
Wow.
Beyond that, they have no definition for what consciousness might be. Consciousness is a many varied thing, and our conscious mind operates in alpha, delta, theta, and beta. So 4 stages of what we consider to be the normal consciousness. We'll get more into what alpha, beta, delta, and theta are later. However, just know that just the conscious mind has 4 known frequencies that it operates on. And these are frequencies that you can look at with an EEG machine. You put electrodes on your head and you can measure whether you're in alpha, beta, delta, or theta. And so that's consciousness. The subconscious mind is what controls you most of the time. The subconscious mind has recorded everything your parents taught you that you should be, everything your teachers told you should be, everything your friends have impressed you with that you should be or shouldn't be, everything that you yourself constantly think about are all recorded in the subconscious mind. Here's the unfortunate part. If you, at any given moment, ask yourself a very simple question, am I here now? As soon as you ask that question, your consciousness shifts, it changes, you'll feel it. And as soon as you ask yourself that question, you feel the shift, ask yourself, what was my mind just doing when I wasn't paying attention to it? And the vast majority of the time, it was thinking something negative. What if I lose my job? What if my girlfriend leaves me? What if nobody likes me? What if I get sick? What if I die? Blah, 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 blah. All these very negative thoughts. There's a very good reason for that. We call this the monkey mind. The monkey mind has a purpose. Its purpose is to protect you from the bad things that can happen, and so that you can make a plan on how to deal with the bad things that may come. The only problem is when you're constantly thinking what can go wrong, that's what you're recording into your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind is a constant recording of tragedy, constant recording of everything going wrong. Well, the great mind has no judgment within it. It has no what we call morality. The great mind is love. As everybody's always said, God is love. That's because the great mind is love. People always say, all you need is love. Well, that's true, but you need money too, but that's another thing.
I know.
So the great mind has no judgment whatsoever about whether things are good or bad or indifferent. So if you're constantly thinking things go bad, things go wrong, the great mind says, oh, I love you, and you enjoy your pain, and you enjoy things going wrong. I'm going to give you a lot of trouble and a lot of things going wrong because I love you. But if you turn that around and every time you say, am I here now? Okay, I can feel it. Now I am here. Even when I say that to you just now, my consciousness shifts. And I say to myself, what was I just thinking before? Okay, every time you catch yourself thinking, what if something goes wrong? Change that to a, what if something goes right? What if I get everything I ever wanted? What if I get the greatest love in the universe? What if I get the biggest, beautiful, most beautiful house? What if everybody likes me? What if, good. Now you're changing the recording. When you change that recording to all good things happening, this is what communicates to the superconscious. And the superconscious then connects it to the great mind. And now the great mind says, oh, I love you. And all you want is beautiful, wonderful things happening. I'm going to give you all the most beautiful, wonderful things you could ever want.
Wow, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more to be said about that, but that's a good opening primer.
It's a very good opening. So, wow, I don't even know where to lead on with this. It happens. So asking yourself, am I here right now? And what was I just thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
How have you come to learn that? And how have you tested it? In what situations does it work for you? How do you ever notice it?
That's a lot of questions. So I'm going to boil it down to not answering all of those, but answering,
of course,
what hit me when you threw out all those questions. When I personally, okay, as I told you early on, how do you know if something is true? You test it. If it works, it's true. If it doesn't work, functionally for you, it's not true. So There came a time when I had taken 2 years off. I had saved up money, taken 2 years off of work to study English because I wanted to be a writer. And so at that time, I had 3 roommates, one guy and one couple and me. And so at the end of 2 years, I had kind of run out of the money that I'd saved up. I no longer had a car. It had been in a bad crash, and I didn't have the money to replace it at that time. And the guy, roommate, his grandmother died and left him a house. So he was moving out. I was about 30 years old at the time. And the couple were breaking up. It's coincidentally all happening at the same time. So here I am without a car, without a job, running out of money, and running out of roommates. And at 30 years of age, you don't really want to live with other people much anymore. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so I'm looking through newspapers and I'm trying to find a job that's going to make it so that I can live on my own, take care of myself decently, and not worry about roommates anymore. Because I really didn't have any roommates to choose from unless it's going to be strangers, and that's pretty icky. So I'm panicking. I got into a serious panic. I started having visions of myself living under a park bench in New York, Central Park, a homeless person in serious trouble. And I was really panicking. I was really, really panicking.
It's like, what if I lose this house? What if I can't buy my next meal? What if this? What if that?
What if everything goes wrong? Precisely, exactly right. And so I was setting myself up for a serious crash here. And not only, here's the real kicker. I'm looking through the newspaper day after day after day, and I'm not seeing anything that's going to earn me enough money to live on my own. And so normally I'm a very private person, and I don't talk about my negative feelings, because if you can't help me with it, then what am I doing? I'm just bringing you down too. So I usually keep my negative thoughts and feelings to myself. But I had one blood brother at the time, literally a blood brother. We cut the arm and put the blood together, the whole deal. As silly as that may sound, we did it. And so he was the only person that I would share even my negative thoughts with. We shared everything. And so at that time, I was living in New York and he was living in Tainan, Taiwan, 12,000 miles apart. And so he had already been a student of mine. Remember, I told you there's 2 ways to climb on the tree of life: up to consciousness and down to unconsciousness. Well, as I was thinking all these negative thoughts, where was I going? I was going deep down into unconsciousness. But previously, I had been extremely awake. I had already learned most of what I'm telling you about now, even that long ago, and that's 35 years ago. Gives you an idea of how old I am, if you put the math together. Anyway, so I called my friend in Taiwan, who had been a student of mine in mysticism. I told him all of this. I told him everything I just told you. I went through that whole problem that I was going through, how I was feeling about it, how I couldn't find a job, blah, blah, blah. And he said 2 things to me that just lit the light bulb over my head and woke me right back up.
Ding!
Exactly. He said, I can't believe I'm hearing this from you, of all people. You have forgotten who you are. And I was like, whoa.
That's deep.
Yeah, but he was responding to what I had taught him and what we had shown each other. We had already had many, many miracles. We had each seen many miracles already. And here I was forgetting about miracles. I was panicking. The normal world would tell you, you're screwed. It's over. It's done. You're going to that park bench and you're getting in that cardboard box, and that's your life, right? And so when he said these 2 phrases to me, it brought everything back. And I zoomed right back up to the level I had been at my most awake. And I said, okay, all right, now I'm completely calm now. All panic gone, everything over. I said, that's very simple, okay. So the next newspaper I picked up, I said, okay, great mind, or as he and I used to call it back then, universe. My mind, my conscious mind as we call it, isn't sufficient to solve this problem for me. So you have to show it to me. I need a job that's going to take care of me. The next newspaper I opened, I looked at it, I said, okay, universe, show it to me. And boom, I saw this ad, and I just knew that this was the answer. I knew this was going to be it, and it made no sense at all.
Why? Why didn't it make sense at all?
It was a job that I'd never heard of before, and it was at a temp agency.
What's a temp agency? Sorry.
Temp agency is usually where you get a job that lasts a week or a month, and a really good one might last 2 months, right?
Okay, cool.
I had worked at a temp agency before because I had moved out to Colorado run a business out there, ran into problems with the partner that I had. Don't need to get into that whole story, but I came back and I didn't want to jump into a job right away. So I went to a temp agency and I took several temp jobs, waiting to decide what I'm going to do next. I was much younger at that time. I was about 22 at that time. And so I already knew that temp jobs are short-term and usually not the greatest pay in the world. And they don't come with benefits, and you're not going to be able to take care of yourself and pay for yourself on working for temps. So it didn't make any sense.
But you felt that that was calling you.
I felt nothing. I knew.
You knew.
I didn't feel. I knew. I saw it and I knew without any doubt whatsoever, this is the answer. And the job, most people are aware now of what this position was, but I had never heard of it before. And at that time in history, most people were not very aware of this job. It was called customer service. Oh. Okay. Most people know what that is now. You're an agent at a company and your people need to have contact with the company. You are the person they call on the phone, usually after waiting on hold for an hour, but you're that person.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I didn't know that. So I said customer. Well, customer means people. I'm good with people. And service. I don't have a bad ego. I can serve. I have no problem with doing service and serving people. So I said, okay, well, I don't know what this is. It doesn't make any sense, and it's at a temp agency. But for some reason, I asked the great mind to show me. And I looked at this, and it just jumped out of the page and said, I am your answer. Not in those words. No, I'm not schizophrenic. I didn't hear the paper talking to me.
I mean, that would have been cool, though.
But I would have doubted it then and doubted myself. Right? It's okay to talk to God, but when God talks back, you might have a problem.
Especially in the form of a paper.
Right, it's a newspaper, that's right. But this, in non-verbal sense, this spoke to me. It just was the answer. I knew it was. Okay, so now I didn't have a car, though. So even if this is the answer, I still don't have a car. So I still have a big problem.
Did the ad on the newspaper say how far away it was?
Nope. The agency, which is not the job, but the agency was one town over, which would be about 3 miles away. So that's not too bad, right? It's fairly close.
Well, unless you're walking.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going to happen with the car. I have no idea. But so I borrowed my mother's car to go to the temp agency. Now, I can't borrow my mother's car every day to go to work, so that's not going to happen. But I can borrow it for this and that, right? So I borrowed the car. I went there. Now, I was dressed to the nines, as they say. I was dressed in a beautiful suit, tie. I was not a kid. I had a beard at the time. I was 30. And so I had a nice beard, but, usually that's not good for an interview. But I looked like a very mature individual, whatever. So I went to the temp agency, and of course, the temp agent looked at me and said, what are you doing here? In other words, I don't look like your average temp worker. I look more like an executive,
Yeah, you came in to do the meeting. You're here to do the deals.
That's right, exactly. That's what I looked like anyway. And so I said, well, I saw your ad in the paper for customer service, and I was interested in that. She said, oh, okay. I think I have a perfect job for you. But you're going to have to go to our it's not at this office of our agency. It's at another agency. And that agency was about 10 miles away.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, brother, I don't know. But I know somehow that this is it. So she said, okay, I can make an appointment for you there. Now, you're going to have to take a test. The test is in logics. And I was like, no problem with that. That's fine. And so I went up to the other agency. I took the logic test. I got 100% on the test, passed it with flying colors. And the agent there said, okay, now we can tell you what the job is. Before we couldn't tell you because the client doesn't want everybody knowing that they have positions open. So this is a position of customer service and sharp electronics. And so, okay, great. So that's another 4 miles also away in the opposite direction.
Boy, right? The miles keep growing here, eh?
Telling you, right. So it's, for any logical, I have great logic scores. As I say, I had to pass this logic test, but logic had nothing to do with this. I just knew somehow that this was going to work. I was now completely at peace, right? Doesn't make sense, but I'm at peace because I knew. And that's what it is. How do we make things happen? We know they will happen, right? And so I went up I borrowed my mother's car to go to that agency. I borrowed my mother's car another time to go for the actual interview at Sharp Electronics. I went in. I got the job. Great. Okay, so now what am I going to do? How am I going to get to this job? Well, as far as I know, I'm not. So I went home, wondering how this is all going to work out, having no idea whatsoever. And just out of a clear blue sky, I told you I keep my problems to myself. I didn't tell any of my friends except for the one in Taiwan what I was going through.
And it's not like your friend in Taiwan had the number to all your other friends to let you know.
That's right. He did know the other friend I'm about to talk about, but he didn't have his number, and he wouldn't have called and talked to him about this anyway. He knows to keep my privacy private. And so this other friend named Kristen came by my house the next day, and he said, hey, I have 2 cars. I can't drive 2 cars. So here's the papers, and here's the keys. My jaw hit the table. I'm like,
are you serious?
How often does this happen? I've been alive for 65 years, and it's the only time it's ever happened to me.
Here's the car, bud.
Just exactly at this point in time, tell me this is not a miracle, right? And so he handed me the keys, he handed me the papers. I've got a car now. I went up and took the job. And I'll make the rest of it a little bit short, but nonetheless, not only did this job pay enough for me to live on my own, it was a long-term temp job, which turned out to be 2.5 years.
Wow.
At the end of the 2.5 years, I had gained great experience, and I was considered the best in the office. I don't know about the industry. The industry is huge, but in Sharp Electronics main headquarters, I was considered the best. And ego has nothing to do with it. That's what they considered me. So much so that I won't get into all the details about why this job was ending in 2.5 years, except to say that it was moving from New York to Chicago, where the labor is cheaper. And so there's a whole very interesting story about that. But it ended up, because the move was supposed to be secret and the move got blown on them, I ended up, and I'll maybe some other time I'll get into the details, but this story's already getting long. It's already quite long. But I ended up with a $5,000 bonus. And 35 years ago, $5,000 was a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh. And not only that, but when this became public, that the customer service and the repairs department, etc., were all moving to Chicago, it became public knowledge. Panasonic called me, headhunted me at my desk, and then gave me a job at Panasonic that went on for many more years. So this temp job went for 2.5 years and then turned into a permanent job after a friend coming by and giving me the keys to a car for free. Now, am I supposed to say this is not a miracle?
I don't even know what I'm supposed to say to something like that happening.
Right? This is my experience. This is why I know. This is why I believe. Now, at that time, I knew that this would work because I had had many more miracles before. That's enough stories for right now. But that's how I knew, and that's how things work. You just know.
Wow. I think that's a lot to take in. And that's a beautiful story to tell. The only thing I could say to that is, from my own experience, it is really that simple. Once you stop doubting, and once you just let go of all the things that you've been taught and just believe that it's going to happen and it's yours, it's there.
That's right. And I must say, not to blow smoke up your, as they say, but the reason you're here and the reason we are having these dialogues and conversations is because you are one of the fastest learning and fastest understanding students that I've had. I've had many students, and you have shown progress rapidly, and I've seen minor yet, but miracles that you've created. And not only that, but just the general improvement in your life and the improvement in your mental state.
I will say, from my personal experiences and the way I lived my life before and how I live now, it's a full 180, and I can't be more grateful. I'm so grateful.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not looking for that. It is well known in mysticism that the only way to get to the next higher branch on the tree of consciousness is to pull someone else up to the branch that you were on. And so, as others have pulled me up, it's my pleasure and my privilege to pull you up. And all of our listeners understand everything that has worked for Brother D and everything that has worked for me can extremely easily work for you.
And I would also like to point out to all our listeners, which is something very important, and I think Brother Mace may do a better job of explaining it.
Go ahead.
Which is, don't worship the messenger. Just listen to the message.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's right. I'm not here to have you look at me. In fact, I'll tell you right now, my name is not Brother Mason Crossroads III. And why have I made this pseudonym and why do you have one? Because we are not important in this. It's the message, not the messenger.
Exactly. And I feel like that's what we would like our listeners to focus on, which is take this message as something that you can think about and hopefully apply it. Actually apply it to your life and see if it works for you. Should it not work, well...
nothing ventured, nothing gained, and also nothing lost.
And no one got hurt.
That's right.
I mean, what more can you ask for?
That's right. And also, just to be clear, it shouldn't be necessary to be said, because I explained why we have pseudonyms, but anybody with any computer savvy or whatever could find me and who I am and where I am and what I am, and I don't care. I don't mind if you do. But if I should falter in your eyes, and I should fall from the pedestal that some people might want to put me on, or other teachers put them on a pedestal, if I should fall off that pedestal, don't let that destroy the message. I'm just the messenger, right? I'm not here to be an example. As I said, I'm here to teach you how to improve the quality of your life and improve your ability to control your environment.
Well, these are all beautiful things to hear. And in our next episode, I will also be sharing a story about some of the miracles that I've been able to pull off. And at first, I was like, no, this is not happening. But then I thought about it, and then I realized, oh, wait, I know why that happened. Nice. Well, to all our listeners, it's been an honor. I'm Brother Roman D. Alexander.
And Brother Mason Crossroads, wishing you peace profound and a beautiful and improved life. Until next time, be well.